Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Last night we were in Palo Alto. We had a gathering there at the Lytton Plaza where we meet once a month for a festival in which we have some public chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and we also have a table to distribute books and prasadam, and we have a special tent there where people can learn how to meditate. Most specifically, we teach japa, meditation. And the morning of the festival, that was yesterday, we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam a purport by our founder Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in which he was suggesting that the best thing that one can do for not only oneself but for the world, for others in the world, is to distribute the transcendental sound vibration, very specifically the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. As many of you who have careers in engineering know, or even in management for that matter, it's really important what kind of algorithm you start with. In fact, if you have the right algorithm, you take the time to set it up, then 50% of your work is done. Am I correct about that? Thank you. So it takes a little thought when embarking on any kind of project, and we might see the lifetime that we have been allotted, however long that might be, as a project. So it's actually the greatest project working on ourselves, isn't it? Would you agree with that? 3 people on this side. Yeah, I like that. I like looking at my life as a project. There's a way in which the human life is especially full of possibilities, very optimistic in the sense that a human being is malleable, means can adjust. And not just adjust, but also improve. What would you say would be the elements for improving oneself? If you were going to name 2 or 3 elements that would be absolutely essential to bettering yourself materially, means physically, mentally, spiritually, what would you say the 3 common elements are? Samadhi? Now, of course, there's a rule in this classroom, and that is that whatever you say doesn't count unless somebody gives you a microphone first. Because it's being broadcast. And yes.
Choosing good association.
Good association. Somebody write this down. Number 1, good association. What else would you say would be vital? Yes.
Self-discipline.
Self-discipline. Now, that's a good idea, too. I really like that. Self-discipline. What a great concept, isn't it? Okay, yes.
Listening something useful, something which can develop yourself.
Would you call that knowledge?
Knowledge, yeah.
Knowledge is good, yeah. Or information. In fact, the word information has an interesting context to it. It has the word form. When you say information, you say form, inform. So how do things assume a form in this world? This is what it means, actually, the word inform. How do they take shape? You hear first, you get knowledge, you're informed. And when you're informed, then you can create what you have internally, you can manifest it externally. Okay, we had 1, 2.
Planning.
Planning. Okay. We could start maybe a business school after we get all these down here.
This is Hansapriya Mataji. She says mentors, cultivate a mentor.
Mentors, cultivate mentors. Okay.
I was going to say determination.
Determination. That's also a good element. These are nice principles. In fact, throughout the Gita, Krishna mentions good qualities that he appreciates. He appreciates seeing them in us. That's interesting. And I always find when I read the Gita and I listen to those qualities, just listening to the qualities, and even though I don't have any of them, it actually, it enriches me hearing about them. And it makes me feel as if I might someday have them, just hearing about the qualities themselves, something to aspire for. Let's hear the list. Mukarvin can read it off for us. He's our scribe.
Good association,
Good association. Okay, that's one.
self-discipline,
Self-discipline is two.
knowledge,
Knowledge.
planning,
Planning.
cultivating mentorship,
Cultivating mentorship.
determination,
Determination.
good qualities like in Bhagavad Gita, what Lord Krishna mentioned.
Okay, good qualities. All the qualities from the Bhagavad Gita. That's pretty good. Prabhupada had simplified this list and in one talk had said that knowledge and practice together are the two most essential ingredients. If you can get knowledge from a reliable source, and you also understand how to apply it, and there's a system you can use to put that knowledge into practice, then as a human being, you really can improve yourself. And I would say that that is one of the aspects of life that gives me the most excitement. And that is understanding that no matter where I am now, if I get the right knowledge and find out how to apply it, and I really liked your point about self-discipline. In fact, the word discipline comes from a Latin word which means learner. How are you going to learn anything without having discipline, self-discipline? That's such a valuable asset to have, isn't it? Because you might know what to do, but then you can't do it. How frustrating is that? On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10. You know what you should be doing, but you just can't do it. Has that ever happened to any of you? Well, you're all so successful. I seriously doubt it. I mean, just looking at all of you, I think I doubt that. But it's such a valuable asset to be able to not only know what to do, but then to actually do it. This is something that comes up in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the very beginning. And it's in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which, as we know, it has 12 cantos altogether. And in the beginning, he finds there's an assembly of sages, an assemblage, sages in a forest, the forest called Naimisharanya. You know what that means? Naimisharanya? It means the place where nobody blinks. They don't close their eyes. No blinking. Because you'll miss something. That's how valuable the information is there. If people didn't want to blink even for a second, Naimisharanya. Another interesting fact about Naimisharanya, it's said to be, if you conceive of the entire universe as is done in the Srimad Bhagavatam as a big wheel, then the center of that is in Naimisharanya. That's the axis, the hub. And so it's a place where people, sages, gather to engage in knowledge gathering and finding out how to apply that knowledge. And we have the benefit of reading about one such assembly, which took place thousands of years ago, in which sages sat down and they wanted to hear about the most important aspects of the spiritual knowledge that comes from the Vedas. So they had some very pointed questions. And their facilitator and speaker ended up as Sutta Goswami. Actually, his father had first been there, but he blew it. Because one thing you don't want to do when you're a teacher is get full of yourself. And that happened to him. Sutta Goswami's father, Ramaharshan. Ramaharshan, the knowledge went to his head. This is also an important aspect we could add to the list, is humility. And in fact, Krishna does put that on the list. You'll notice that in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, starting with verse number 8. Somebody tell me, one of the Bhagavad Gita scholars in here, tell me what those verses are about. 8 through 11. 8 through 13. No, put it up yet. Somebody here tell me, what, just off the top of your head, what those verses are for. What? Yeah, what is knowledge? Or more accurately, what is the process of knowledge? Like, how do you come to knowledge? Amazingly, now you can show it. The first thing Krishna says, if you want to get knowledge, he said, Amani Dvam, be humble. Isn't that interesting? It was something Socrates also said. He said, the knowledge is already there, but you have to adjust yourself so that it can awaken within you. And not only that, if you want to take it from the environment, you have to adjust your approach. He asked a lot of questions. In fact, we have the phrase now, the Socratic method, which means asking a lot of questions. He didn't speak all the time in a way to teach, other than asking more and more questions. In fact, sometimes people criticized him. 13th chapter, no? 8 through 12. So, Sutta Goswami, okay, next verse. There it is. It's a long series of verses. This is what Krishna says is the path to knowledge. Shall we read it? Yes. Okay, the ones who didn't say yes, cover your ears. Okay. Move it down. I want to see the English. Okay, here it is. Here's your list all the way down. Translation. Humility, pridelessness. Ramananda, what's going on? It's not on this side, it's just for my endurance. I don't know if you can. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance. Listen to this list. This is amazing, actually. If you were going to make a diary entry, to start your day, there's a lot of things that you can put in there. Oh, go ahead. It'll be interesting. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual. How's that for the beginning of a list of 20 items of how you actually get real knowledge? What do you think of that? It's awesome. Yeah, so you think about humility, and it's really almost the opposite of the idea of the scientific method that one way or another I'm going to pry the answer out of the world. I'll get a crowbar and I'll extract it from nature. We find, however, there are limitations to that. In fact, there's a phenomena that occurs in science, in all sciences, the hard and soft sciences, that when you approach a subject, the subject changes. Do you know about this? And therefore it's said that you can never actually observe something in its original pristine state. Because as soon as you look at it, let me tell you about the soft sciences. Let me say sociology. Let's say somebody wants to interview you and they want to find out from you about your life. Right? They're going to come over to your house and interview you. Now what are you going to do? First thing, be honest. Clean the house. You're darn right you are. You're going to clean out all the junk. You're going to put things away. You'll put them in closets, drawers, whatever, so that you look really good. You're also going to clean yourself up. You look in the mirror 3 times, does this really fit? So they're not going to see you as you are. As soon as they knock on the door, everything changes. And there's some sense of that also in quantum physics. I've heard things about, quarks hiding. You look at it, it's like, hey, where'd you go? You just moved. And so it's very difficult to actually charge right in to a subject, into a person's life, into the natural world and extract from it something that's observably correct. I don't know if that phrase made any sense, but the fact is that things we see through our senses and the way that we approach them is important. And the very fact that our senses are limited. Therefore, Krishna advocates this point, humility, as a way in which we open ourselves to secrets that can be revealed to us. We know this on a personal level. If somebody approaches you again and asks you a question, if they do it in a humble way, you're much more likely to answer them. If somebody writes you an email and demands something, you may just close down right away and say, I'm not going to answer that, and go find it somewhere else, right? But if they're very humble and they approach you in the right way, in the right tone of voice, then you might be open to it. The similar thing Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that I'm going to tell you my secrets because I find that you're not envious of me. Arjuna approached Krishna in a very humble way. In fact, this is a good technique for life. What happened to Arjuna? What happens to him in the first chapter? He's what? He's bewildered. Would you all say he gets bewildered in the first chapter?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever felt bewildered?
Yes.
Srivaspana raised his hand, shot up. Thank you. It helps to admit it. So he got really bewildered. And so what happens at the beginning of the second chapter? He breaks down. Have you ever had a breakdown? Feels good, right? Not while you're having it or approaching it, but if you actually break down and you just admit, I don't know anything, I don't know how to get out of this. I mean, that's basically what Arjuna did. That's his technique for knowledge. He got to that point where he said, I can't handle this. He tried to intellectualize it in the beginning, didn't he? He started off by giving really esoteric, very logical objections to the war that Krishna was pushing him into. It's like, okay, let's go. And like, let's not. And he gave all his reasons. And then Krishna said, you're speaking as the way you think a learned person would speak, but actually you're a fool. All the things you've said. Of course, he said that after Arjuna said, I give up. I don't know what to do anymore. I leave it to you. So this is something I highly recommend, and that is giving up. And somebody reminded me of that recently. Is that devotee? He lives in, he's in a wheelchair, has muscular dystrophy. Vishwarup, yeah, I met Vishwarup when I was in Ahmedabad. And he came and talked to me. I'd never really had a chance to talk to him. He's such a nice devotee. He gives discourses on Bhagavad Gita. He's bound to a wheelchair. He can't get out of it because he has a condition. And, he told me when we were talking, he said, I met you like four years ago. You gave a class in Vrindavan. And he said, I asked you a question at the end of class. Do you remember this? Yeah. And he said, what do you do when you get really frustrated and things aren't going your way? Something like that, right? And I don't even remember giving this answer, but I liked it when he told me, because it works for me. He said, so what do I do? And I said, start over. Just start over. And so he remembered that over 4 years, and he told me it really works. And it's kind of like Arjuna's doing this technique. It's like, I give up. Because after all, we're insignificant. If I admit my insignificance, it's a great relief. It's really hard to maintain the front that I'm actually significant. Because at any time I can be revealed as insignificant. And it's very embarrassing when you're trying to put yourself forward as being important and significant. And so this humility, amanidvam, think about the word itself. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha, nirman, you know, look at the word, this is a crossover into English, but yes, English colloquialisms, but you know, when people say you're the man, they say you be the man. Have you ever heard that? They say, yeah, you're the man. And so Krishna's saying nirmana, it means nirman, don't be the man. You're not the man. Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha. Nirmana moha. Be free from this idea that, like, I am the man. And this is the first step in getting knowledge. You know, kind of give up. Doesn't mean give up your self-discipline, and it doesn't mean don't give up the inquiry and don't give up trying. It just means give up being the one who's making it happen. That's what humility means. You step out of the position that I'm driving this thing and realize that I'm not driving it, I'm a servant. I'm an instrument. This is humility. Because sometimes people say, if I become humble, then everyone's just going to use me as a doormat. Come on, right? The corporate world, there always comes up, is if I become humble, then everyone will take advantage of me. But that's not what it means either. It means to understand that you're an instrument for Krishna. And to conduct yourself as an instrument, Krishna's instrument, as a servant. This is real humility. Otherwise, Prabhupada poses this question. He said, was Arjuna humble when he went out on the battlefield after he heard from Krishna and then he went and fought? And he did everything he could to kill the other side. Was that being very humble? Was it? Yeah, you can say yes. It was. Because that's what real humility means. It means to align yourself with Krishna as the doer. In fact, this word ahankara, ahankara means I'm doing it. Ahankara means false ego, but it really literally means I'm the doer. I'm the one who making everything happen. But humility means Krishna willing. It's up to Krishna. And all the great sages and bhakti teachers say this, like Prahlad Maharaj. He mentions that, don't depend on external circumstances and think that those are the things that are going to make the difference. He mentions a boat, medicine, and taking care of your child. So he says, if you have medicine, there's no guarantee it's going to work. Right? Yeah. I can prove that. Ask any doctor. When they give you the medicine, first of all, they're not quite sure what you have. Because they never are. Probably, 80% chance. And then they give you the medicine. If you say, can you absolutely guarantee me that this will fix the problem? What are they going to say? Say, I can't say that. I'll be sued because I can't guarantee it. In fact, when they give you an operation, and they put you under and they have to cut anything, they make you sign 7 times to say, like, please excuse us if we kill you, because we can't guarantee that we won't kill you. Don't they? Yeah, they sure do. Because and it's it's the way the world is, and that's what Prahlad Maharaj is saying. It's like medicine, even in Ayurveda. Any fans of Ayurveda here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, in Ayurveda, there's a verse that says, before you take this medicine, you have to say, it won't work without the blessings of Lord Vishnu. You don't just take it and say, it's going to work. And similarly, a boat. We don't have to say anything more than Titanic. It was supposed to be the best boat ever built, and it sank on its virgin voyage. It was obliterated and went down by a little iceberg. And of course, taking care of anyone. But he's here, Prahlad's saying, taking care of children. You do the best you can, but who knows, right? How do you know how they're going to turn out? You do what you can to take care of them in every way. So this humility is a really important part of getting knowledge. And Arjuna shows the example. He didn't change his job. Same job. Just changed the way he thought about doing it. in a humble way. Instead of thinking I'm the doer and I'm responsible for the results, he thought Krishna is the doer and I'm going to depend on him for the results. He didn't change his clothes, didn't change his hair, didn't change his house, where he lived, only changed that feeling that he had, why he was doing the service. In fact, throughout the Gita, Krishna recommends this as the way to live in the world without being touched by it. There's a great art, he says, the art of yoga, means to live in the world without being touched by it. And it's an internal process. Externally, of course, you can try to stay clean as possible. This is recommended throughout the Gita. Be as clean as you can in your external environment, but internally, that's where we really catch on to the material world. It's through our desire and through our consciousness. So Krishna says, be like a lotus flower. The lotus flower can live in the water. In fact, it grows out of the mud at the bottom of the pond, but it's never actually touched by it, and it exists like that. And Krishna says, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya lipyatena sapapena padma patram ivambasa. Padma patram ivambasa. He said, live like a lotus. Say, live like a lotus. We should put that on a hat. Live like a lotus. Yeah, live like the lotus. And what's the main feature that makes one impervious to the movements of the material world? That is the quality of sangam tyakva karotiya, lipite. So lipite means the kind of entanglement one gets by connecting oneself to the lower energy of the material world. I should say the lower energy that is the material world. As far as we're concerned as souls, the material world's all lower energy because we're in a higher category of energy altogether. When I say we, I mean we, the Atma, the soul, who are the observers of the body. We're traveling in this body for a finite amount of time. And while we're in the body, Krishna gives these instructions in the Gita how to not become entangled in it and make things worse. Don't make things worse. Srila Prabhupada used to say, make the best use of a bad bargain. Now, so he says, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya. So don't connect yourself to the result of your work. This takes humility. It means you may do all kinds of things. You may be a great singer. But where did your voice come from? It came from Krishna, and now you're singing. The power to sing can be taken away at any time. Julie Andrews, unfortunately, who's a great singer, she lost her voice. And, it's not guaranteed, because Krishna, by arrangement, could take it away at any time. Whatever we do, we should consider I'm doing it by the grace of Krishna, and therefore I offer the result to him. And I offer the credit to him too. That seems easy enough, doesn't it? This is really the foundational aspect of service to God and bhakti. It's thinking in this way, that I'm actually not the doer, Krishna's the doer, I'm just the instrument. But it's fine to be the instrument, because that's what we really are. And if we act in that capacity, then Krishna can really fill us up and give us more capacity to express his grace to the world and in our lives by being an instrument. We block a lot of that by demanding that we get credit for everything. That makes us complicit with the laws of material nature. But if you just swear it off, then you can do all kinds of things, but you don't get entangled. That's what Krishna is saying. Lipyatena sapapena. Papena, pap means? Sin. Yeah, that's kind of a Christian word, sin. But, it means really acting against our nature, going against the laws of nature, going against what's in our best interest. So lipite means that you become besmirched. Do you know what that means? Shraddha, what does besmirch mean? Everyone say besmirch. You have to use it in a sentence sometime today. Let's hear. It kind of sounds like what it is. Okay, let's hear.
So besmirch is a verb which says damage the reputation of someone or something in the opinion of others. For
Oh,
example, he had besmirched the good name of his family. Dirty or discolored.
dirty or discolored, besmirch,
Soil,
soil,
discredit,
discredit,
taint.
taint,
And as a noun, it's a dirty mark or a stain.
a dirty mark or a stain as a noun. And let's hear where it comes from.
It
Probably,
just is
it's just a colloquialism, isn't it?
yeah.
It's almost onomatopoeic. It sounds like what it's doing, besmirching. So, Krishna says, lipyate nasapapena. You don't become besmirched. Your reputation doesn't get ruined. You don't get marked up by the modes of material nature, and you can really get tarnished by mixing it up with the material modes of nature. So you stay free from all that. If internally you give away the result to Krishna, you say, I'm just an instrument, I'm working for you. So, Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyakva karotiya. Whatever work you're doing, do it as an offering to Krishna, and be aware of the fact that you're only doing it because Krishna's empowering you to do that. So, today I want to talk about asking questions, because it's my contention, and I'll argue it to my last day, that the most important punctuation mark in any language is the question mark. Anybody want to argue about it? That's my first question. Yeah, questions are the answer. And this is a spiritual principle, actually, how important questions are. It comes up in the Vedanta Sutra, of all places, in the very beginning. Vedanta Sutra begins how? Give a microphone to Srivas Pandit. Let's hear it right from the Pandit himself. This is Vedanta Sutra is a summarization of the Upanishads. The Upanishads are really kind of summarizing what all the Vedas are about. The Vedas are like a tree. And of course, they all have, a tree has within it various aspects. It's all the same tree, but then what would you say would be the most important part of the tree? Trunk. The fruit, yeah. Trunk's pretty important too. But ultimately, I mean, they're all important, and that's a good point. It's all the parts are important, but you want the fruit that comes at the end. That's called Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you go backwards from there, then you come into Vedanta Sutra, because see, the Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, and the Vedanta Sutra really is a summarization. It's a codified way of talking about the Upanishads. And the Upanishads, as the name means, to sit up close. It means you want to listen, you want to ask good questions to a qualified teacher. And that comes after you've gone through the Vedas, which is a vast part of the tree where you're trying to adjust yourself from the material world so that you can be a little happier than you were yesterday. And when you realize that that's superfluous to your real nature, you're not going to actually find any comfortable position anywhere in the material world. Then you come to the Upanishads. That's why you're sitting up close, because you say, now I want to hear the real solution. So then you get the Vedanta Sutra. Now the Vedanta Sutra starts off with this verse. Let's hear it from Srivas Pandit, Prabhu.
It starts off with Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now begin the inquiry into Brahman.
Now begin the inquiry into Brahman. It's actually an order. And Atato means therefore. And there's a lot in the sutras. The sutra's terse. It's a very compact phrase, and you're supposed to unpack it. And that's what all the acharyas do. They unpack the Vedanta Sutras. In our Sampradaya, Baladev Vidyabhushan unpacks it. We didn't, in our Sampradaya, do it for many, many years because it's considered from the Puranas that the Srimad Bhagavatam is already the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So why would we bother? But Baladev Vidyabhushan, for the honor of our Sampradaya, did it brilliantly anyway for everybody. So atato means therefore, which indicates that because you've tried everything else and it didn't work, right? You've tried everything, it didn't work. So it's saying to you as a human being, like, you've been everywhere. You've been in the sky. How have you been in the sky? You've been as a bird. Yeah. And you've been at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah. And you've been in the mountains, and you've been in the caves. You've tried everything. You've eaten everything too. Narottam Das Thakur says that all these different species of life, basically they all have different tasting facilities, different kinds of tongue, and they just try all kinds of stuff. And you can finally come to the conclusion, there's enough of this. There's nothing here. It's different combinations and permutations of the same thing. And so everything you've tried, it's all been done and more, and you weren't successful. And if you have that kind of feeling in your heart that I've tried everything, I'm not successful, that's a good place to be, actually. That's one of the beginning points of spiritual life. In fact, we find Devahuti, one of the most famous saints of the Srimad Bhagavatam, who's the mother of Kapiladev. She starts off by telling him, I'm sick and tired of this. I really am tired of struggling with my senses. It's just so aggravating to be overwhelmed by the lower senses again and again and be led into that frustrating situation, but I keep doing it, but no more. There was a comic strip when I was growing up. In fact, he was a very famous comic, and he lived nearby. Where did he live near Kula? In Northern California. Charles Schultz. Santa Rosa. He's world famous. He wrote a comic strip called Peanuts. And it had a character who's still iconic. His name was Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown had a hard time of it in the world. And he was always getting the wrong end of the stick. And he had a friend, so-called friend, Lucy, in the neighborhood, and she always used to tempt him to kick a football. In American football, you'd hold the ball, one person would hold the ball, and then somebody else would come up and kick it. So she'd always entice him, come and kick it. And he'd think, okay, I'm going to do it this time. And he'd come running, and as soon as he'd get close, she'd pull it away. And he'd go flying up, and then next scene, you'd see him landing on his head. Smash. And every time we saw Charlie Brown coming to kick the football, we could empathize with that, because we all know the feeling. This time, I'm really going to get it. And then, whoop, boom. Land in your head. So that's what the Vedanta Sutra means, Atato Brahma Jignasa. You've landed on your head so many times, you've tried to kick the ball, but it was pulled out from underneath you. You want to know why? Ask why. That's what it's saying. Now's the time to inquire, is there something better than this? Is there a better method? And what's my origin? So the system of spiritual life really is not that we have all the answers or we're going to pry them out of material nature, but if you put yourself in the right position, the right frame of consciousness, you have the right attitude, and you ask the right question, then you'll get everything. That's how, in one sense, simple it is, the process of spiritual life. It's about asking the right question. A question is like a trigger. It's so powerful. It's like a nuclear weapon has a trigger that makes it a chain reaction start that kind of, is demonstrative. It gets out of control. So in a similar way, if we ask the right questions in our life and we ask them in the right attitude, that's what starts a sequence of events that brings us to a higher level of consciousness, asking the proper question. So Tato Brahma Jignasa, that's the first question we're advised to ask. And the implication is you won't be disappointed. The answer is forthcoming, but the most amazing thing, the Srimad Bhagavatam brings this out, is that people don't ask it. They just think it's either beneath me to ask, or why bother, because, I'll never know anyway, no one will ever know. But this is not what the Vedanta Sutra says. It says, no, ask. Just ask sincerely, and the answer is available. In fact, the Omkar, one great devotee once said, means, it's the big yes. Everyone say Om. Om means yes, yes, yes. And yoga means plus. It means that you can get everything that you're looking for. It's all available to you and more than you could imagine. But you could only unlock that if you approach it, that is Brahman, with the right attitude, and you ask the right question. So who's the first person that we know of in the world who asked this question? How do you know that? We know it because it's there clearly in the Shastra, that in the Srimad Bhagavatam and also in the Brahma Samhita we find that Brahma, who is the firstborn living entity in this world, who's his mother and father? Okay. He comes out of the navel pit of Lord Vishnu, and he's born on the lotus stem. He doesn't know where he is, and he doesn't know who he is, so he begins to ask, where do I come from? And he's searching it out. And this is an interesting point also, that we have a natural inclination, humans, I'm speaking for the whole human race here, don't mind. We humans have a natural inclination to want to know where we came from. How else would you explain people flying into outer space? I mean, it doesn't actually make any sense, flying as far as they can in every direction into outer space to gather information, to kind of understand what's our origin. In fact, there have been expeditions to catch meteors, because they can get a little bit of the substance from the meteor, and by studying it, they'll find out, where did we actually come from? Where are we from? This is the understanding. Why do I say it doesn't make sense? Because, there's plenty of other things you could spend money on right here at home, right? Start with fixing the potholes on 101. Or BART, give me a break. Blow that thing up. No, start over. Don't blow anything up. Start over and build something decent. It's California, for heaven's sake. But the point is, it's not logical unless there's a natural urge to inquire, where am I from? What's my origin? To look here and there and find out, where did I come from? Digging holes, going deep in the earth, sending rods down there to find the core. How deep does it go? What's in there? This is a natural urge. You don't find animals doing that. Animals inquire, says the Srimad Bhagavatam, about 4 things only: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Those are the 4 questions they ask. And if you see a dog digging a hole, I won't go further than that. But it's related to the body, one way or the other. It's not out of a sense of a tato brahma jignasa. What is Brahman? What is the highest? Where do I come from? What's my origin? Humans can do that, and that's amazing. And they have a natural urge to do that. Now, logically, every urge that we have, for instance, name a couple natural urges that we have. Wanting to eat, yes, it's Ekadashi. Thanks for bringing that up. And for those of you who are dry fasting, and some in the front row here, the urge to drink. We have an urge to drink, don't we? Yeah. Those things are there. If you have an urge to drink, have you ever noticed that there's water available? And if you have you have a natural urge to eat, it makes sense that there's food, there's things that you can eat, right? So when you have a natural urge to know where you came from, and if we named all the different urges, we'd see they have their counterparts. There's also a counterpart. It's a natural human urge to say, where do I come from? Who am I? What's the ultimate? What is the best thing? There's an answer, and this is what the Bhagavatam says. It's forthcoming if you ask it, you have the right attitude, and you ask the right question. What are the two things? Right attitude and right question, then you'll get everything. And the Vedic system, if there's a lifestyle, Vedic lifestyle, it's really about preparing your internal and external environment so that you can ask the question properly. Because if you're in the mode of rajas or passion, it's really hard to stop and ask good questions. I'll give you the quintessential example. A man's trying to cut down a tree. He has a saw that is dull, and therefore he's sawing back and forth, but it's not making any progress. So another person comes by and says, "Excuse me, sir, I know a little bit about this. Let me help you out here. You need to sharpen that saw." And the man sawing answers, "I don't have time." That's the mode of passion. It's defined there in the Bhagavad Gita that you go on doing things over and over again, you're not getting anywhere, but you don't have time to stop and ask the question of why I'm not getting anywhere. So you're not in the right attitude. You don't have the right internal settings to ask the right questions. So the idea of living in an ashram, living the first part of your life in a idyllic situation where you simply serve the guru, as a gurukula. What's the idea behind that? Like the brahmachari, the ideal brahmachari goes out and begs and brings back, gives everything to the guru. Then the guru doesn't call the brahmachari for lunch. What does the brahmachari do? Sneaks out the back, goes to the drive-in, the drive-through. No, he just doesn't eat. Why? What is that? Some kind of torture? It's what? Why? Austerity for what reason? People do austerities all the time for no reason at all. What is the reason for performing such an austerity? Let's ask Srivas Pandit Prabhu. What is the end goal for that kind of an arrangement?
Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam means eternal happiness as...
But I'm thinking of the exact attitude that we're looking for. Kautukarnika.
To develop humility.
Yes, develop humility. That's right. And in a sense that nothing belongs to me. This is, as Prabhupada said, develops moral character. That's the main purpose of it, right? Is to develop moral character. Everything you said was correct, but I was going for a particular thing. Back to this idea of humility. If you develop that sense, then this is the way in which, or the attitude with which, when you ask the question, then you can ask it in such a way that you can receive the answer. Or that you can even ask the question sincerely, who am I and what's the purpose in life? So this is astounding to me that the solution to all of life's problems is so close by, yet I can barely touch it. And therefore it requires amending myself, and therefore there are spiritual disciplines through which one amends one's attitude, one's consciousness, so that one can beseechingly ask the question. If you ask the question with deep sincerity, then the answer comes to you very quickly. So before I go into the next part, to take some lessons from those in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita who've asked the best of questions, see what kind of questions these great souls have asked. We'll take some reflections. Reflection means anything you heard so far that's stuck in your mind that you can reflect back for the benefit of all. Are you ready? Mark, get set, go. Yes. Pass it back. Shri Kabar in the back with the green sweatshirt.
You remember, you know the man, that's the one which is, I mean, it's to me.
That's what it says in Sanskrit, Nirmana Moha. Don't be the man. Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned that when you are right frame of mind, you get all the answers. So, as is mentioned in Svetaswata Upanishad, that when it says, Yasya Deve Para Bhakti Yatha Deve Tatha Guru Tatsete Kathita Yartha Prakasante Mahatmana.
Nice.
That verse supports this, that only they don't say that you dig on all the questions and answer, but they say that only when you have implicit faith in the Shastra and you have implicit faith in a spiritual master, then only you get all the knowledge revealed to you. So
Yes. You really have to have developed well-reasoned faith in the source of your knowledge. The doubting process is very important. It's part of intelligence. In fact, this is something that Kapila Dev mentions in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that one of the most important features of the intellect is to doubt. Otherwise, how are you going to eliminate those things that are false and come to the point of understanding what's actually true? There's a phrase, blind faith. In fact, it's there in most cultures. There's an idea about blind faith. But as Sri Dayananda Maharaj likes to point out, it's such an excellent point. Where in the cultures is there a phrase that says blind doubt? It's the same idea. So the Srimad Bhagavatam recommends that we use our intellect and selectively come to the conclusion that there is a source of axiomatic knowledge. And once you find that source, then you develop deep trust in it. And two sources that Mukharavinda mentioned, the Shastra, which is said to be the axiomatic truth, which is eternal, it's always available, and then the Guru, who presents that to you, both through his or her example of lifestyle and also through teachings. And if you have faith in those two sources of knowledge, complete faith, implicit faith, then the conclusions of the Vedas are forthcoming. Good, thank you, Mukharavind. We'll take a few more reflections, because we're on a roll now. Okay, we have one right here, and then...
I really liked your comment where you said that we are traveling in this body for a limited period of time. So the moment you change your perspective from that I'm just traveling, like you don't get attached to a train in which you're traveling or the plane that you're traveling in.
Yeah.
Similarly, you don't get attached to the body and the extensions of the body.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because Prabhupada brought that exact example up when it comes to toleration. And he said, you get on a train, and in the old days when Prabhupada used to travel in trains, there were no reserved seats. So you get in there, and then somebody, just unceremoniously takes the last seat. And there you are, nowhere for you to sit. So he said, you can make a big fuss, or you can think about it and say, I'm only on here for 2 hours. Why start a fight? I've seen fights at train stations in South India. I've seen it. It was hot. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The humility you mentioned, that which over the years when you do Sankirtan,
Yes.
like recently we are in a door, we knock at the door to door Sankirtan for Chaitanya Charitamrita. The first door we knocked, that person was having lunch. He said, can you come back? So we went after half an hour, and then she was in the phone and said,
I said, no problem, we can wait. And she said, my call is not important, please come inside. She invited, and we are humbly waiting for less than 10 minutes. And finally, she started the conversation and took Chaitanya Charitamrita. Means the more we do Sankirtan, the humility increases, Prabhu. So that.
Yes, good point. This was Lord Chaitanya's method of presenting Krishna consciousness. Sometimes he didn't say anything. I may think I have to tell everybody everything, and I have to also tell them how they're wrong about everything. Even in Krishna consciousness, we find those who are Krishna conscious, and then they go pointing out how everyone else's Krishna consciousness isn't correctly adjusted. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Jagannath Puri, Sarvabhauma was a fatherly figure. Of course, he was the greatest scholar in the world, and he met this young sannyasi, 24 years old, and he told Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was that sannyasi, that now I'm going to help you move up to a higher level of sannyas, and I'm also going to help instruct you. And what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? He said nothing. He sat and he listened for 7 days without saying a word. I mean, how hard is that? Especially when somebody's speaking philosophy that's obviously off the wall. But he's just sat and listened. So this is one of the methods that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught of humility, how to touch other people's hearts. Don't immediately jump in and start telling them everything. Thank you very much. Kanka.
When you talked about like if someone wrote you a note and they demanded questions, they were demanding, then you would be less apt to write back right away. But if someone approached you, so similarly, I had an experience at our house where the person had studied at a seminar to be a priest, and comes all the time with challenging questions and not nice, and it's almost like you just don't want to answer, you don't want to talk, you just it's so frustrating. And the other point was tolerance. When Srila Prabhupada would fly on the plane in the early days, they didn't have they had a smoking section. They didn't have no smoking. So the devotees would say, I'm going to ask them not to smoke. And he would say no. He said, we have to learn how to be tolerant.
Yes. Thank you very much. Bringing us back to that important point of understanding, it's how somebody asks the question that makes the difference. Because questions may be there, but we also need to ask them in the right attitude. And it's similar in advancing on the spiritual path, which all begins with a question. And if we ask the right question with the right attitude, what do we have to do? Yes. If you know what the right question is, and you have the right attitude when you ask it, then all the answers are forthcoming. In fact, Krishna is ready and willing to impart those answers. And that's why Om means the big yes. It's all available. Just put yourself in the right position. Bali Mardan Prabhu.
I think I like the thing you brought, the beginning is question mark. And there is also a conversation with Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj with Madan Mohan Malviya, who is the founder of the Hindu University, Banaras Hindu University. And he came, just like in Bhagavad Gita, you see, Tadvidi Panipadena Pariprashrena Sevaya Upadektansida Gyani Gyaninam Tattva Darshina. Means to ask the questions by serving. And when he came, and he said that I have important philosophical questions to be discussed or to ask to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. So the devotee said, okay, you wait for some time. Then after a few minutes, then said, okay, why don't you go and ask the questions to the cook or the cleaner? Well, he was very hesitant to share his important questions to someone very inferior in the organization. But anyway, he said that why don't you come join us cleaning? And finally he went, and he did cleaning services, and at the same time, he came back and he talked for half an hour, and his question was actually answered. Then by the time he met Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, he said, "What is your question?" He said, "No, actually it is already answered." Then Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj pointed out, because you serve and little service you gave, your question is answered. So you have to serve the spiritual master, to the spiritual leaders, to get your questions answered. Just ask with arrogance or duplicity, then you will be more complicated.
So let's have a show of hands who would like to help clean the temple tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, okay, we got a lot of volunteers. We'll have Bali Mardan give tell the story each night before we ask for volunteers. But it's a very good point that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta brought before this scholar who came and actually he had a lot of potential. He wanted to become a learned person, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta sent him to the gardener who was cleaning the grounds and told him to go ask from him, and the person thought he was kidding at first. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, was applying this principle, amanidvam, be humble. That's where knowledge comes from. Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the discussion. Initially, when you started, you asked, some of the qualities that somebody should display to get the spiritual mindset going, and many people said planning, discipline, such and such. One of the things that came to my mind was that it has to start with some sort of a dissatisfaction. Why would I ask a question if I'm satisfied? So is that a correct question?
Yes.
Any spiritual inquiry will begin with some sort of a dissatisfaction with what's going on.
Such an astute point you've made. Thank you so much. Excellent question. This is a point that Prabhupada brings up in many places, but one place that's noteworthy is in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami mentions that by introspection, one can understand one's real nature. This is also an interesting point, because I'm bringing up the simplicity of the spiritual process. It means inquire with the right attitude and all the answers are forthcoming. So similarly, Shukadeva Goswami says, if you introspect, and probably goes on in the purport to say that even a common person who learns how to introspect, look within, can come to understand what he or she is, and not the body. And he gives a process for introspection, which begins with noticing the fact that your body is made of material elements. Notice the fact that there's such a thing as mind stuff that's observable, and therefore it's not you because you're the one observing it. And also notice that there's an intellect, there's a higher being who's actually informing you, and that's coming from a higher source. These are all observable, even, as Prabhupada says, to the common person. It's easy enough. Now, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions this principle of frustration. He says that frustration is actually a sign that we're spiritual beings. And what's the logic behind that? It's this. If we were compatible with the material world, if we were made of the same substance, if we were akin to the nature of the material world, we wouldn't even notice any frustration, because it would just be all the same to us. But I can frankly say, and my wife can attest to this, that I'm frequently frustrated by the material energy. And it could be anything. Credit card expires right at the wrong time. You have 2 passports, one with the visa, one that's the new one. You get on the plane with the new one and leave the visa. Have to have it FedEx to a foreign country. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen that are frustrating. We could make a list, right? Commiseration. We could really go for it. And that's a sign. The sign is that we don't belong here. This is a huge clue. Frustration is the doorway to enlightenment. And yes, some of the greatest conversations in the Srimad Bhagavatam take place when somebody is so frustrated that they say, I quit, I give up, I want to know the real answer. That's a better attitude than I already know everything. In fact, Kunti says this. She says, if you're already satisfied with what you have, you're not feeling frustrated. First of all, you're an idiot. Second of all, you're not going to get any knowledge because you're already full. But when you're utterly frustrated, that's the time when you have what we call a teachable moment. I mean, really frustrated. When you've lost it all, you blew it, your reputation's gone, everything. You just have to start over. That's where I began in the talk. You start over. That's when you can actually touch the web of the divine, is when you really are feeling that. And that's what Kunti says. She says you have to be akinchana. It's like, I don't have any qualification, I'm the most insignificant, I don't have anything that bolster me here in the material world. And anything that appears to be a bolstering agent, it's just temporary false. It's an illusion that I think it's actually something I can take shelter of. Shukadev says a similar thing. Deha patra kalatra deshu, etc. He says, this body, all your relatives, your bank balance, the education you got, all these kinds of things, they really can't save you. If you feel totally frustrated and therefore helpless, that's where you want to be. Akinchana. That's when you can actually call out with sincere feeling. That's when you can ask the question properly. And when you're chanting, it's a question. Krishna, could you please engage me in your service? Could you please give me a clue how to actually be useful to you in any way? And if you ask the question sincerely enough, the vibration is totally different from when somebody's full of themselves. For instance, there are musicians that can do great kirtan. And they, the way they sing, the way they play their instruments, it's masterful. But if they're not devotees, they don't actually believe in Krishna, then our Acharya, Sanatana Goswami, says, don't listen to that. It won't do you any good. What are you talking about? It's the holy name. It won't do you any good. And then he gives the example, Sarpochishta Payoyata. He says it's like milk touched by the lips of a snake. Sarpo. And you put a little milk out, a little snake comes in, takes off. Next thing you know, you drink the milk. You got some venom in there. So it's really important what the attitude of the chanter is. And you find somebody who's not so artful. We were at a kirtan when we were in Jagannath Puri this year. One of our godbrothers came, and somebody handed him the mic for the Guru Puja. And he's not an artful singer, but so much devotion. It was obvious to everybody. I saw a shockwave go through the whole group of devotees, because he was singing with such intensity, and not a false intensity. It was very natural, but it was like sincerity, and we all felt it. And I had this realization: that's where the power comes from, because the sound that we make carries our consciousness. And so we have to refine our consciousness, and then the sound vibration we make when we're in consciousness in which we're fully dependent on Krishna. That's the sound vibration he hears, above all other sounds. Just like a mother, common example. She knows the different pitches of her child's cry. Some of it's just, he's cranky. And the other, like, what happened? She'll go, run through a wall to get to the child because she recognizes the vibration. She's in tune to that, even 2 buildings away. So Krishna, no matter where he is, of course he's everywhere, But you may say, well, he's in Goloka Vrindavan, he's busy with his sincere devotees, how's he going to hear me? If you're absolutely sincere, if you have the right attitude, that's what counts. It's the right attitude. And if you get the words wrong, who cares? And we notice that in this world. If you have the right attitude in approaching some big shot, but you say it backwards, they'll still accept you and what you said, because you said it with the right attitude. So that's so important. Okay, now we'll take 5 minutes to stand up and meet somebody that you haven't met before. I know this is a challenge, come out of your comfort zone for a minute, but there are a few people in here, I guarantee, if you look at the different combinations and permutations that you haven't met before, and if I catch you talking to one of your friends, you're not getting prasadam tonight. So don't make me come in here. So stand up and meet somebody that you haven't met before. Introduce yourself and ask them one question that will help them advance in spiritual life. Are you ready? Say yes. Yes. I'm not convinced. Say yes. Yes. Okay, go. I'll come back in 5 minutes.
Go Premanande. Itai Goda Haribo, 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 Itai Goda. Yeah, sometimes you wonder about the Hari Bol, right? I was just reading in the Chaitanya Charitamrita the other day that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sometimes he'd go into trance, and he was experiencing the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, and his associates would come, and they would bring him back to external consciousness. Sometimes he wasn't so happy about it, but they would chant really loudly, and they would like awaken him to his external consciousness. And when he would awaken, and several instances mentioned, as soon as he'd come back, he'd go, Haribo, Haribo. So this is Haribo, is an ecstatic expression. And in another place, Prabhupada says it's an abbreviation for the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So saying Haribo. And it's also the password that will get you into any place in the world. Because I guarantee you there's a Hare Krishna temple or household on every continent and practically every city of the world now. And once when I went to Hong Kong, I was just a kid. I was a brahmachari, and I got there. I didn't know anybody. The flame was late. I went to the flat where the temple was supposed to be. It was just a bunch of buildings and a lot of buttons to push. So I pushed one. It was in Cantonese. I didn't recognize it. So then I heard a voice in Chinese come out. It was 1 a.m, and all I said was Haribo, and then went ee. And I was walking up the stairway. I was thinking, this is the password to anywhere in the world. In fact, you go anywhere and just say Haribo, and people, hey. So we like to chant Haribo, and just a few extra points about questions. And that is, what are the 2 points we made? Right attitude, right question. That's the key to spiritual life. If you have the right attitude and you ask the right question, it'll start a chain reaction in your life that will be so amazing that you can't imagine how it's all happening, because it's coming from Krishna. Because that's what unlocks it, the right attitude. If you have an attitude of humility, and you ask the right question, it's a code, it's an algorithm that Krishna responds to. And he responds in such ways that can only said to be amazing. So we started with Brahma. Brahma, you said, was the first, or I asked the question, who was the first in the universe to ask the question. And this is a very important point that he was asking, where do I come from? And Krishna gave him the means by which he could understand everything. What did he say? Tapa? Yeah, do some devotional service. Tapa, do some austerity. And then Krishna revealed everything to him because of his question and because of his service. And then there was Vyasadeva. What question did Vyasadeva ask that any of us on a bad day could ask? Why am I feeling morose? Why do I feel unfulfilled? You were talking about Vyasadeva. He's an incarnation of the Lord, a literary incarnation, the literary incarnation. And he asks in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam to his guru, in a very humble way, he says, only you can help me. Please tell me, why am I not feeling fulfilled? I'm doing all my services as best I can. And Narada gave him an answer. If you were going to say it in just a few words, one sentence with a period at the end, what would you say his answer would be? To this question, why am I feeling unfulfilled? He said, anything you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord will disturb your mind the way a boat on water is disturbed by the wind. And this is the essence of what he said. He said, you're not listening to the right kind of vibrations, and you're not projecting them also. You should talk more about Krishna. Everyone okay? Okay. 2 questions Arjuna asked that are invaluable. One was, what are the symptoms of a self-realized person? Aren't you glad he asked that question? Otherwise, we might think that to be self-realized means you have to have, what? A robe and a long beard or something like that. Prabhupada says in one place, it doesn't mean that you have big hair and that you have 4 arms or something like that. But Krishna answered this question, what is the actual symptom? And what is one of the first things that's mentioned, that Krishna mentions, is a symptom of a self-realized person? I couldn't hear what you said, but I'll just take it as Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parta manogatan atman yeva atmana tushta stitta pragnas tadochite. He said a person who can withdraw the senses from the desires that are manufactured by the mind, who no longer buys into the factory-produced desires that come from the mind. He says those are being produced on a conveyor belt. They're coming out one after another, and he's divorced himself from that conveyor belt and all the products on it. Just said they're not from me. Hare Krishna. And so that was one of the first things. But he goes on to explain what is the symptom of a self-realized person. And he also asked Krishna in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavatam, who are you? You remember when Krishna shows his universal form to Arjuna, he says, who are you? What does Krishna answer? Time I am, the destroyer of all the worlds. So Krishna reveals himself as time, the time factor. Then we have Devahuti. I mentioned her earlier, but she asked a very important question, and I think is a frequently asked question for those who take to spiritual life and feel like they're not making any advancement. Anyone? Okay. 3 people. Everyone else cover your ears. She said, is it possible to come out of the bodily conception of life? She said, I've been in this so long, it seems impossible. Huh? So, good question to hear the answer to. And also, it's nice to hear the question that an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is asking, saying, this seems really impossible to actually overcome attraction to the material world. How am I going to do it? I feel like I am my mind. I think I am my body. I don't see, since I've been in this situation since time immemorial, how I'm ever going to come out of it. And Kapila Dev gives the answer. It's kind of simple. Should I say what it is? Yeah. But it's too simple. Should I make it more complicated? No. Just say it the simple way? Yes. He said you should hear for a long time. For a long time. And be absorbed in your service. Be in service and keep hearing. And he said hearing over a long period of time will dissolve the material conception of life. The way the food within the stomach is dissolved by the stomach acids, and it's distributed to all parts of the body. It will go on by the power of that hearing, the right vibration. Glad she asked the question, aren't you? See how important questions are? Okay. And then finally, Rupa Goswami, was it Rupa or Sanatan who asked? Sanatan Goswami asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what did he ask? Who am I and why am I suffering? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went on, wouldn't you like to know the answer to the question, why I'm suffering? Would everyone in the world like to know? Is there one single cause to all the suffering in the world? Yes. Say yes. Feel free. The answer is yes. And wouldn't we like to know the answer? Aren't we glad that someone was humble enough to ask that question? And someone that was so exalted they had the right attitude when they asked it? And Mahaprabhu gave the answer. He said, because you're engaging in activities that are not connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You've forgotten that selfless service is the key to happiness in life. You're trying to serve yourself. And therefore, you're committing, you're engaged in a travesty that has reactions in this world. And it's those reactions that cause you the suffering. But when you take to devotional service, aprarabdha, he quotes this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, aprarabdha palam papam kutam bijam palon mukam krame naiva priliyante Vishnu bhakti ratatmanan. He says that all of the reactions, this is called karma, it comes in many different forms, subtle, midway, fully manifest, just like in gardening. There's all these seeds and weeds and a cycle that goes on. It's very complicated. And it's very hard to stop once it starts, to eradicate it. He said, but by Vishnu Bhakti, if you engage in service to Krishna, then you uproot all the karma, all the suffering goes away. And when you just start devotional service with the intention of serving Krishna, you come out of distress because you've cut the source of suffering at the root. And the cause of suffering is sin or papa. And that can be eradicated by pure devotional service. Even following a pure devotee can eradicate that. So we've made the point today that if you ask the right question with the right attitude, and you go on asking it, you'll feel satisfaction and the answers will be forthcoming. And this is the natural way that the Brahma Sutra, or known as the Vedanta Sutra, recommends that we start our spiritual life and we continue our spiritual life. Keep asking the right question. And don't ask stupid questions. We give $100 for any stupid question, by the way. But I have to see if I have a $100 bill here. You ask questions. If you ask questions, for instance, if you ask, somebody give me a stupid question. I don't have $100 right now, but it's in my bag. A question that doesn't help you in spiritual life. Have you seen Indra? Somebody asked Prabhupada that. He said, why'd you ask that question? What difference does it make to you if I've seen Indra or not? Or you could say, you could ask a lot of questions about the worldly questions. Of course, not that we become impractical and we stop asking practical questions, like, does the what? Does the physical wall protect the nation? I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. But there are a lot of questions like that and related to intractable situations or things that really don't matter in life. And if we keep asking them, the Bhagavatam says, you're no better than a bird. A bird wakes up in the morning and it asks a lot of questions. And the basic question he's asking is what? Where's the worm? So don't ask where the worm is, because you'll get it. And that's the way material nature works. If you want a better quality of life, ask a better quality of question. And if you ask the very best question in life and you keep asking it and you develop the right attitude, everything will come to you. And that's the essence of spiritual life. And it doesn't matter what tradition you come from. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. It's universal principle that God's in everyone's heart. And he's waiting for us to ask the right question. And as soon as you ask it, and you have the right attitude, he begins pouring in the answers as fast as you can take them. And that's the excitement of real life as a human being. And there is no other excitement. The rest of it is all wrong questions, wrong answers, and frustration. Hare Krishna. Thank you. We're coming up to Gaur Purnima on Wednesday night. That is the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the most recent incarnation of Krishna, who appeared 500 years ago. He came to spread love of God all over the world. And anyone who celebrates his appearance day, especially at a temple where he's standing like this, will get an invaluable benediction that such a person will feel. You'll take it home with you. So come celebrate with us. We'll start here next Wednesday at 4:30 a.m. in the morning if you want to come for Mangal Artik. And they will go through the morning. In the afternoon, there'll be kirtans. And then the evening, we'll start up at 5 o'clock. And we'll have kirtans. We'll have an abhishekam, almost as big as the one you saw in Mayapur recently. And everyone will feel happy. Also, leading up to that, we have the golden avatar of a book called the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And we've been going all over Silicon Valley to the wealthiest and most influential people. We've been placing them in their homes and offices. And we have a long list of people who have taken them. And we have a goal to distribute them to as many people as possible. Show one really quick. He's pulling it out of the bookshelf. It's right back there. And when I say golden avatar of a book, I really mean it. Look at this. How many books are in the set, SKP? 9 books in the set. And there are, how much are they? $99. Here, stand up and go like this. This that you see on the showroom floor, this is the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So there's an opportunity between now and at about 15 minutes to 7 o'clock on Gaur Purnima to sponsor these sets. If you don't have one, stampede after this, really literally, stampede, and get your set. It's $99. And if you already have one, get a few more, and or just give the money to one of the Sankirtan leaders, and they'll go out and very aggressively, within their heart, but peacefully externally, place them in homes, offices. They're going to the wealthiest and the most influential, and everywhere else, for that matter. A man from Morocco the other day took a set of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's a Muslim, but he recognized that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is teaching a universal principle that everyone can take to, and he said, I want to read this book. I'm going to put it in my home. We have photographic evidence of all this. So please take advantage tonight. There's going to be a very brief window of time right after the announcements when you're able to raise your hand and say, I'll take a set, or I'll donate a few hundred or a few $1,000s to take a few sets of Bhagavatams. Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard will be here tonight at 8 o'clock. Anybody wants to stay? She's born a Hare Krishna. She's running for president of the United States. Just so you know, we're apolitical here at ISV, but when it comes to Hare Krishnas, we like them. So Tulsi will be here. She's amazing. She's going everywhere and speaking about Krishna consciousness, basically. One time I was at a luncheon and somebody asked her how she gets along with so many people from both sides of the aisle. And she said, it's not rocket science. You just have to be nice to people. So she come here tonight. Of course, she's a politician on a campaign, so whether she makes it or not, that's a whole other thing. But the plan is that she'll be here at 8 o'clock if you want to stick around, and she'll probably, she comes for darshan, and then she'll probably speak for a few minutes, and then have some prasadam and has to fly off somewhere else. Thank you very much for coming tonight, everyone. And we're going to have a dance party now. Never miss a chance to dance, because life is very short, and dancing, believe it or not, is one of the main things that goes on in the spiritual world. So if you stand around like a stick, I don't know if they're going to pick you up. But if you get into this dancing, you'll see that you don't have to be a great scholar. You don't have to know a lot of shlokas or Sanskrit and everything like that. In the spiritual world, they dance to the holy name. So if you dance, at least in your heart, then you'll see that Krishna will come very soon and get you. So we're going to put away all the floor coverings, the seats, everything. They all have a place. Everyone will help you out. And then we'll get set up for the evening arti. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined us online tonight. Hare Krishna. Marman, Natari Marman. Nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, hey, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman, nachari ar marman.